Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj Ki Jai.
Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishkam Vitamscha Om Jnana Timaranda Shagyananshana Shalakya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhishtam Supurakam Gurganara Seshasam Bhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Bidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Vande Vishwa Gurun Shah Divyad Bhagavat Prem Navi Bija Pranam Devam Divyatanam Suchandavaranam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyam Bunim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Varam Bandetam Shivanam Madeka Sharanam Nyashishwara Shridaram Mancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. We're hearing from Sri Chaitanya Bhagawat by Srila Vrindaban Das Thakur. This is a translation by Sarva Bhavana Prabhu. And this chapter, chapter 5 is the Pastimes of Sri Nityananda. One day, Gaurasundara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, now manifest in human form, was sitting in a secluded place conversing with Nityananda. The Lord said to Nityananda Prabhu, O exalted one, dear Nityananda, please listen. You must return to Navadip immediately. In my own words, I have promised I will drown every ignorant, wretched, and fallen soul in the deluge of Krishna Prema. However, if you also take to the reclusive life and discard your indomitable enthusiasm to propagate the chanting of the holy name, then who will deliver these fallen souls? You are the storehouse of devotional mellows, distributing divine love to everyone. If you withdraw within yourself away from these activities, then what was the necessity of your appearance on this planet? In my opinion, I think you should go immediately to Bengal and relieve the sufferings of the conditioned souls by showering them with attraction for devotional service. On receiving these instructions from the Lord, Nityananda Prabhu started for Bengal with all his devoted associates. These elevated souls were Ramadas, Gadadhar Das, Raghunath Vaidya, Krishnadas Pandit, Parameshwari Das, and Pundara Pandit. On the way, Sri Nityananda was the first to be overcome with spiritual ecstasy. This spiritual mood then infected all his other associates. First, they were filled with wonderment seeing Nityananda. However, soon they were also experiencing unlimited divine bliss. Ramadas, a stalwart among the Vaishnavas, was imbued with the spiritual mood of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna himself. All at once, right in the middle of the road, he stood like Gopal, bent in 3 places for almost an hour, oblivious of his surroundings. Gadadhar Das was overcome with the mood of Srimati Radharani. Laughing in the sweetest peals, he said, "Who wants to buy yogurt?" Raghunath Vaidya was draped in the sublime personality of Mother Revati. Parameshwari Das and Krishna Das were both experiencing the mood of Gopal and the cowherd boys. They began to make sounds with their mouths as if herding the cows. Purandar Prabhu climbed up a tree, shouting Shouting, he said, I am Angara, and jumped down in a leap from the branches. Sri Nityananda infused into everyone's heart the ecstatic experience of exhilarating spiritual moods. They traveled like this for a few miles, sometimes going to the left and sometimes to the right, without any particular discretion. After a while, they asked the local people, please tell us how we can reach the Ganga. They replied, O goddess, you have already come too far. You must go back a distance of 2 hours. They changed direction according to the direction of the locals and traveled for a while in the right direction. But again, after some distance, they got aimlessly lost in their mood of ecstasy. They had to stop someone and again ask for proper direction. Again, they were directed, you have to travel another 20 miles to the left. Realizing their confusion and looking at each other, they laughed and embarked once more on their journey. They had forgotten the existence of their own bodies, what to speak of remembering the right direction. Unconcerned about the needs of the body, such as thirst, hunger, fear, and distress, they were always experiencing great joy. Who can describe the transcendental activities of Sri Nityananda as he traveled? They are inexhaustible and unlimited. Finally, they arrived at Panihati village on the banks of the river Ganga. Sri Nityananda went first to the house of Sri Raghava Pandit and put up there with all his devotees. Raghava Pandit, Sri Makaradvaj Khan, and their families were very happy to receive their most exalted guests, who remained there for a few days. In that wonderful atmosphere, Nityananda and his devotees felt always spiritually exhilarated, and occasionally Nityananda would loudly roar out his appreciation. Once he strongly felt within himself the spiritual urge to dance. Suddenly all the devotee singers began to appear there. Sri Madhava Ghosh, the famous kirtan singer, arrived. His kirtan singing was the best in the whole world. He was known as the singer from Vrindaban because he was especially expert in singing about the Lord's Vrindaban pastimes, which were the favorite kirtans of Sri Nityananda. Sri Nityananda danced with such ecstatic abandon that the earth reeled under his weight. Roaring sounds like thunder incessantly issued from his mouth, and when he fell crashing to the ground, people stood back in amazement. When his merciful glance fell upon any person, that fortunate person was instantaneously infused with divine Krishna prem, which would cause the recipient to fall to the ground swooning. Sri Nityananda is the embodiment of the highest spiritual love, and he has advantage simply to alleviate the suffering due to the ignorance of the world. While dancing, he manifested all the different ecstatic symptoms of divine love. Finally, upon the request of the devotees, he sat down upon the throne of Sri Vishnu to be bathed. Sri Raghava Pandit and the other external associates of Sri Nityananda immediately prepared for the Abhishek bathing ceremony. They assembled hundreds of pots filled with Ganga water and perfumed it with delicate aromas. With gladdened hearts, the devotees one by one poured water over Sri Nityananda's head and all the while chanted the holy name of the Lord in appropriate mantras. They felt divine exhilaration surge through their persons. After the Abhishek, they clothed him in fresh new clothes, decorated him with sandalwood paste, and covered his full broad chest with garlands of fragrant wild flowers and tulasi leaves. They then sat him upon an ornate golden throne of Vishnu, which was draped with flower garlands and leaves. As Sri Nityananda sat down, Raghava Pandit went behind the throne and held an open umbrella over his head. The whole house now began to reverberate with the jubilant sound of human voices chanting the holy name, mingled with melodious musical instruments. Lifting their arms and begging the Lord to protect them, the devotees forgot all their cares and worries and even their own bodies. Sri Nityananda, now totally steeped in ecstasy of his own divine self, glanced all around, emanating Krishna Prem from his eyes, and showered the assembled devotees with his merciful teardrops. He called Raghava Pandit and ordered, "Dear Raghava Pandit, right this moment, go and bring me a garland of kadamba flowers. I am very fond of kadamba flowers. In fact, I am always attracted to stay in a forest of kadambas." With folded hands, Sri Raghava Pandit replied, "My lord, this is not the season for kadambas." The Lord gently pressed, "Go and look carefully in the garden. Maybe a few can be seen, blooming somewhere." Sri Raghava Pandit went inside the house to the courtyard garden and was very astonished to see what met his eyes. Fresh and lovely kadamba flowers were blooming gleefully upon his lemon tree. The flowers were a beautiful hue and gave out the sweetest fragrance. In fact, these extraordinary flowers would destroy all the material attachments of anyone who looked at them. Sri Raghava Pandit was beside himself with joy as he beheld this supramundane phenomena. He quickly gathered the kadamba flowers and deftly strung them into a garland, bringing it before Sri Nityananda. Nityananda was greatly pleased to see the kadamba garland and wore it around his neck. The Vaishnavas became intoxicated by the heavy aroma of the flowers and were fascinated by the miracle. Yet soon, yet another miracle took place. Suddenly, the whole room was fragrant with a new scent, the delectable fragrance of Damanaka flowers filled the air, captivating everyone's mind. Laughing aloud, Nityananda teased everyone, saying, "Tell me which flower smells like that." The devotees replied with folded hands, "The air carries the delightful scent of Damanaka." Letting everyone speak first, Nityananda finally revealed to them a great secret. He said, with overflowing compassion, "Pay good attention to this very mysterious happening. Sri Chaitanya has come from Nilachala and is present here now to hear your kirtan. He is laden with the Damanaka flower garlands that he is wearing around his neck, and he has entered the form of a tree. Thus the scent from his divine garlands is now permeating everywhere. He has come personally from Puri to hear your kirtan and witness your dancing. Therefore, all of you now leave everything else aside and just constantly chant the holy name of Krishna. Let the nectar of the wonderful activities of Sri Krishna Chaitanya infuse you with Krishna Prem." After thus revealing this transcendental happening, Sri Nityananda began to roar loudly and chanting Hari Hari. He glanced over everyone, his vision emanating sublime love of Krishna. The devotees, touched by the infinitely tender glance of the Lord, were instantly transported to a region transcending the mundane plane of physical awareness. Dear readers, please try to comprehend the extraordinary glance of Sri Nityananda, how he inundated the entire planet with the knowledge and taste of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. A super excellent mood of devotional surrender of the damsels of Vrindaban, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, was facilely made available to the whole world by the mercy of Sri Nityananda. Lord Nityananda was sitting on the throne, and all the devotees sang and danced in front of him. Some of the devotees, unable to contain their surging glee, climbed up a tree and began to move about playfully on the tender branches and twigs, but miraculously no one fell. Others roared thunderously in the bliss of prema and jumped down from the trees. There were others who circled their arms around a tree trunk and uprooted the whole tree, all the while loudly chanting, Hari, Hari. Some became so surcharged with such immense spiritual strength that they ran to a nearby row of betel nut trees, and putting their arms around a number of them, uprooted them all at once as if they were a bunch of grass. The extraordinary potency of Sri Nityananda to infuse the devotees with blissful love of Krishna was so dynamic that their bodies began manifesting all the ecstatic symptoms of prema, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam: crying, shivering, being stunned, perspiring profusely, horripilation, roaring, hoarseness, turning pale, and so on. Wherever Lord Nityananda glanced, he showered the nectarine rains of devotional ecstasy. As his transcendental glance rested upon any devotee, that devotee was instantaneously injected with divine love and fell swooning to the ground, unaware of his actions and state of dress. Magnetically drawn to the divine person of the Lord, the devotees stretched out in an attempt to reach him. Lord Nityananda, a perfect picture of contentment, remained seated on his throne, smiling benignly. All of his main associates became imbued with extraordinary spiritual potency and mystic opulence. They became omniscient, and their every word became true. Their features flowered into the divine attractiveness of Cupid. All his main associates became imbued with extraordinary spiritual potency and mystic opulence. They became omniscient, and their every word became true. Their features flowered into the beautiful attractiveness of Cupid. Whomever they touched became electrified with the divine spiritual energy, forgetting even their own bodies. What to speak of any attachment to mundane time, place, and circumstances. Sri Nityananda spent 3 months in Panihati, performing transcendental pastimes with associates, thus revealing the sublime nature of bhakti, devotional service. The 3 months passed quickly, carrying the devotees in the waves of divine ecstasy. Unconcerned about their physical needs, they sang and danced, forgetful of hunger and sleep. The whole village of Panihati was heaved upon waves of jubilation that all the Vedas would find difficult to fully describe. In truth, what Lord Nityananda would do in the span of an hour is practically impossible for anyone to narrate exhaustively. Sometimes he would dance in a stately manner, surrounded by the devotees, and then suddenly he might decide to sit upon the throne and then order the devotees to dance before him one by one. During each dance performance of the devotees, many incidents occurred. The dancing would inspire transcendental loving emotion amongst the watching devotees, drowning them in a deluge of Krishna prema. Sometimes, when the ecstasy had reached an apex, all the spectator devotees would fall swooning. They looked like a cluster of banana trees being uprooted in a storm. The devotees joyfully did as directed by Nityananda and eagerly executed his desires. Led by Sri Nityananda, they constantly chanted the name and glories of Krishna Chaitanya. Thus the whole atmosphere was spiritually highly surcharged. Whoever came, even to simply watch the happenings, would be so infected with the spiritual atmosphere that they also would become truly involved and oblivious to everything else. Whatever the devotees desired was immediately fulfilled. In this manner, the 3 months seemed to fly by in a moment without anyone noticing. One day during these 3 months, Lord Nityananda felt the desire to decorate himself with ornaments and fine dress. As soon as he felt the urge, different people without prior intimation arrived bringing their fineries. All these gifts were very precious and of the best quality. The finest silks and exquisite gold jewelry studded with brilliant gems. The people came with their gifts and offered them with great reverence to the Lord, who tried on all the different ornaments. No one had ever seen such a wide variety of jewelry of all shapes and designs. Gold ornaments with the gold intricately worked to give the most exquisite designs, studded with pearls, emeralds, and rubies. Sri Nityananda put on beautiful rings upon all his 10 fingers, and many brilliant necklaces of priceless gems decorated his neck and chest. Then, showing special favor to Lord Shiva, he slipped two Rudraksha necklaces around his neck. As he moved, the light set afire the gems set into his golden earrings. The silver anklets around his lotus feet tinkled pleasingly when cream, blue, and yellow silks draped him. White, cream, blue, and yellow silks draped him in flowing grace. An enchanting sight it was indeed. Devotees had lovingly made beautiful elaborate garlands of fragrant flowers such as Malati, Madhavi, Malika, Juti, and Champak, and now placed them over his head to sit delicately upon his chest with the shimmering gems. With each motion, the garlands swayed, and the fragrance mixed with the aroma of fresh sandalwood paste that was applied to his body. With each motion, the garland swayed, and the fragrance mingled with the aroma of fresh sandalwood paste that was applied to his body. The air was filled with a heavy, sweet scent. Soft, shining silks of different hues were tied together. Shining silks of different hues were tied around his head to make a multicolored turban. Bright flower garlands were neatly added to the turban to make a unique headgear. Sri Nityananda's happy face exuded enough irresistible glowing charm to overshadow the brilliance of a million moons. Smiling, he constantly chanted the name of the Lord. His lotus-eyed glance roved the room and released in every heart the floodgate of love of Krishna. 2 iron rods that shone like silver stood on either side of his throne. He held one in his hand, just as Balaram holds his plow. His associates, who were actually expansions of the cowherd boys of Braja, took up the various ornaments. His associates, who were actually expansions of the cowherd boys of Braja, took up the various ornaments and instruments that usually decorate them as they go grazing the cows. Thus they dressed themselves with armlets, belts, anklets, and necklaces. They tied horns, flutes, and reeds to their belts and looped the ropes for tying cows around their shoulders. Then Nityananda went out with his associates as if going to graze the cows. They visited the houses of all the Vaishnavas residing on both banks of the Ganga. Immersed in the ocean of ecstasy, Within himself, the Lord blessed everyone with his association. On his sight, the people were helplessly drowned. On his sight, the people were helplessly drawn to him, captivated by his power and beauty. Sri Nityananda is the embodiment of all transcendental mellows, representing both the holy name and the supreme God in himself. Even the atheist and agnostics, upon seeing him, began to offer prayers, feeling an urge in their melted hearts to offer everything to him. The most munificent Lord showers causeless mercy upon all. Wherever he went, whatever he did, Sri Nityananda was constantly absorbed in Sankirtan. Moreover, when he began dancing and singing in kirtan, he sent everyone reeling in spirals of divine exaltation. Even young children exhibited wonderful powers in his presence. Children from ordinary households manifested such strength that they uprooted big trees whilst roaring loudly like thunderbolts. They said, "I am a cowherd boy, Gopal," and ran about. Hundreds tried to hold these children, but failed to do so. Certainly, there were extraordinary feats. Certainly, these were extraordinary feats for mere children. They chanted jubilantly, "Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda." Sri Nityananda relished these pastimes and made the children perform acts that are even more extraordinary. One particular child fasted for over a month without any difficulty, leaving everyone in the village wondering in amazement. Associating with the Lord, the children relished every part of his transcendental pastimes and often entered into complete ecstatic trances. However, the Lord was like a guardian angel to the children and was their constant guide and protector. He treated them like a father to a son, oftentimes feeding them with his own hands. Some of them he kept by his side, binding them with his love. But sometimes as a disciplinarian, he would even beat them, all the while laughing loudly. One day the Lord decided to visit the home of Srila Gadadhar Das to convey his feeling of great affection for him. Srila Gadadhar was a very elevated Vaishnava who was always absorbed in the ecstatic mood of the Braja Gopis. Placing a water pot filled with Ganga water upon his head, he would go around vending. Who wants to buy cow's milk? Who? Such was his absorption in the mood of Braja, a deity of Bal Gopal, possessing most exquisite, charming glances and dressed in fineries, was worshipped in Gadadhar's home temple. Sri Nityananda, upon seeing Bal Gopal, immediately picked him up from the altar and pressed him tightly to his breast. The devotees loudly chanted the holy name, and in jubilation upon this momentous occasion, as they beheld Anantasesh, Nityananda pressing Bal Gopal to his own heart, Sri Nityananda instantly entered a state of ecstatic trance, and roaring like a lion, he began to dance. The specially gifted Sri Murari Ghosh, the specially gifted Sri Madhava Ghosh was then started to sing in a very sweet voice. Hearing his song, which described the pastime of Krishna levying taxes upon the gopis, Sri Nityananda was overwhelmed in ecstatic pastimes with the most fortunate Gadadhar Das, who never forgot for a moment that he was actually a gopi. The Lord continued to dance so gracefully that it is impossible to describe his listened movements. He manifested all the ecstatic symptoms and the transformations of divine emotion in Krishna Prem. His movements were like flashes of lightning, yet charming and delicate. The expressions with his eyes and eyebrows were subtle, and he always kept a mild smile playing upon his lips. The movements of his head were expertly done, like a seasoned classical dancer, knowing the correct nuances to express the various transcendental moods. Then, bringing his exquisite feet together, he would pirouette and jump with ease and gracefully flowing movements. He was the all-merciful Lord. So wherever he looked, all the men and women felt drawn into an ocean of indescribable bliss. Such was the impact of his benign glance, that every recipient lost all sense of time, body, and matter, and experienced only overwhelming joy. The highest quality of pure bhakti, aspired for but only the best. The highest quality of pure bhakti, aspired for by only the best of yogis and philosophers, was being received freely by ordinary mortals by the infinite grace of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. By his mercy, further miracles also began to manifest. When a grown-up man, as strong as an elephant, has to fast for 3 days, he becomes weak. However, the children who had been fasting for a month, now when they dance, seem to have more energy and stamina than young lions. Although Sri Nityananda manifested such miraculous powers and effects by the illusory potency of the Lord, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, no one could understand the truth of the events. Sri Nityananda spent a few days more in the home of Gadadhar Das, drowning everyone in an ocean of transcendental bliss. Gadadhar Das felt the deepest divine exhilaration in forgetting the external Gadadhar Das felt the deepest divine exhilaration in forgetting the external surroundings. He constantly chanted the holy name and tirelessly encouraged everyone to do the same. He constantly chanted the holy name and tirelessly encouraged everyone to do the same. In the same village lived a very tyrannical Muslim Qazi, magistrate, who was very strict and fanatical. Out of hate and intolerance towards other religious practices, he had officially banned the performance of kirtan in public. Intoxicated with spiritual ecstasy arising from Sri Nityananda's divine association, Gadadhar Das one night made his way to the Qazi's house. Everyone was mortally fearful of the Qazi, but this night Gadadhar Das strode fearlessly to his residence. Never once did he stop chanting, and he entered the house. Never once did he stop chanting as he entered the house. The Qazi's friends and family members stared speechless in disbelief at Gadadhar Das. Gadadhar Das said, Where is that rascal Kazi? He had better chant Krishna's name now, or I will sever his head. The Kazi came charging in, fuming with rage, but upon seeing Gadadhar Das, he calmed himself. The Kazi inquired, "Why have you come here, Gadadhar Das?" Gadadhar Das replied, I have some things to discuss with you. Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Sri Nityananda have incarnated in this age and have inspired the entire world to chant Krishna's holy name. Only you remain yet to chant, so I have come to urge you to chant Sri Hari's name. The Lord's holy name is all auspicious and supremely beneficial, and I take responsibility for saving you from all sinful reactions if you simply chant. Although the Kazi was known to be very cruel, he was now speechless and stupefied. Then smiling wanly, the Kazi said, "Listen, Gadadhar Das, tomorrow I will certainly comply with your request to chant Hari, Hari. But tonight, please go home." As soon as Gadadhar Das heard Sri Hari's name from the Kazi's mouth, he became jubilant. He said, "Why wait for tomorrow? Just now you have taken the Lord's name, and so now you are completely free from all sins and inauspiciousness." Saying this to the Kazi, Sri Gadadhar Das began to dance like a madman, clapping his hands. Then suddenly he turned around and left, leaving a surprised Kazi still staring upon him. Happily, Gadadhar Das returned to his residence. Gadadhar Das was always absorbed in meditation upon Sri Nityananda. He is counted amongst the foremost of Sri Chaitanya's associates. This Kazi was considered so evil that no saintly person would even go near him. In fact, they said his close proximity would, Gadadhar Das was always absorbed in meditation upon Sri Nityananda. He is counted among the foremost of Sri Chaitanya's associates. This Kazi was considered so evil that no saintly person would even go near him. In fact, they said his close proximity would contaminate anyone. Yet Gadadhar Das showed his mercy even to such a demoniac person as him. Gadadhar Das was able to make him temporarily forget his malicious ways and at once inspire him to take Krishna's holy name. The truth is that one who is imbued with love of Krishna can never be attacked by snakes, tigers, or any wild beast, or be burned by fire. The devotional surrender to Krishna, for which Lord Rama strives in the intimate loving exchanges of the gopis of Vrindaban with Krishna, were all manifest in the associates of Sri Nityananda solely by his causeless mercy. Therefore, all of you, my brothers, please serve the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda. By his infinite grace, one can attain the eternal shelter of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. A few days passed, and one day Lord Nityananda had the urge to see Sri Sachi Mata. Therefore he left the next day, journeying towards Navadip with his associates. On the way he came to a village called Karadaha Gram, and first went to the home of Purandar Pandit. Here Nityananda danced in great jubilation with countless Here Nityananda danced in great jubilation with countless new gestures and postures to properly describe his graceful and lithe movements is impossible. Sri Purandar was also a great devotee who was already mad with love of Krishna, and he became so inebriated with a prema rasa charged spiritual atmosphere that like a lunatic he climbed up on a tree and began to roar like a mad lion. Another devotee present named Chaitanya Das had become so surcharged with spiritual ecstasy that he was oblivious of everything around him. He ran into the nearby forest and chased away the wild beast with his rumbling roars. When he saw a tiger, he jumped on his back. The tiger was stunned and helpless, unable to do anything. Such is the potency of the mercy of Sri Krishna. He then picked up a huge python, cradled it on his lap, and fondled it gleefully, as if it were merely a toy. Just as earlier with the tiger, Chaitanya Das was absolutely fearless. All these miracles were taking place by the mercy of Sri Nityananda. So just as earlier with the tiger, Chaitanya Das was absolutely fearless. All these miracles were taking place by the mercy of Sri Nityananda, who is so magnanimous, loving, and protecting of his devotees. By this mercy, Sri Nityananda's associates felt no terror even from wild, hostile beasts, and they are easily rewarded with the rarest gift of prema rasa, which is extremely difficult to obtain, even for Lord Brahma. Sri Chaitanya Das was continually deep in ecstasy, completely forgetful of himself. Once he continuously spoke his most intimate thoughts. Once he roared, submerged in water for several days. Once he remained submerged in water for several days without the slightest trace of mental or physical discomfort. Sometimes he lay inert like a stone, and at other times became boisterous like a hungry lion. His behavior and activities were all very unusual, and his devotional associates were too numerous and subtle sometimes Sri Chaitanya Das was continuously deep in ecstasy, completely forgetful of himself. Openly, he continuously spoke his most intimate thoughts. Once he remained submerged in water for several days without the slightest trace of mental or physical discomfiture. Sometimes he lay inert like a stone, and at other times became boisterous like a hungry lion. His behavior and activities were all very unusual, and his devotional ecstasies were too numerous and subtle to be described. Sri Chaitanya Das was truly a surrendered devotee, just like the great Murari Pandit. Even if just a breeze that had touched his body reached someone, that person would immediately feel growing attachment for Sri Krishna. So I'm going to stop here, and next reading will continue. Hariharaya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Hariharaya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan. Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhatta Raghunath. Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhatta Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. Jaite Vignana Shabista Puran. Jaite Vignana Shabista Puran. H.I. Gosai Jar Mui Taradas. H.I. Gosai Jar Mui Taradas. Tasabar para renu mora panchagras. Tasabara para renu mora panchagras. Tader charana sevi bhakta sanibas. Tader charana sevi bhakta sanibas. Janame more abilas. Janame more abilas. H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Korila Prakash. Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Korila Prakash. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majayaman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majayaman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koryash. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koryash. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Tamudas. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Haribo. 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 Jaya Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Shata Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashi Srimad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Rupanuga Guru Marga ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Shri Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Prem Sigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Vishvavaranya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Shri Vrindaban Das Thakur ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Bhagawat ki jai, Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. All the assembled devotees ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Jai Om Vishnu Pad Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj ki jai.